So many of the things we've studied, there's so much to it. Every detail, every word has meaning. In the birth of Christ, there were so many prophecies that were fulfilled. We looked at some of them last week. Even the shepherds that got the message out in the field, that was a special group of shepherds. It wasn't just any old manger that Jesus. He was born into the manger and attended with the shepherds that attended to the flocks of the sacrificial life. Well, last week I said we'd look at the star. I love that song that Vicki sings every Christmas, the Star of Bethlehem. There's a lot of good songs at Christmas time. I like them all. And they all have meaning. I believe God gives writers or musicians at some points in time just special subjects to write a song on. I mean, look at Amazing Grace. The words to that song have been sung in all languages, in all different ways, for years and years. And it's a special story behind that song. The song's a special too, but these swaddling clothes goes back. There's how many places in the Bible are they mentioned? 3?
I think in Lamentations, I know in Ezekiel.
Well, 3 or 4 places. They're in the book of Job. Go ahead.
It went all through the Bible. I mean, all the way back to the Salt concept. That it just all the different things what brought it together to the birth of Jesus.
All these prophecies came together with the birth of Jesus. In Matthew chapter 2. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. There's a lot more to this, but let's stop right here. There will come wise men from the east. In a lot of places, and I've heard all my life about the Magi. But the word Magi is not in the Bible. It says wise men. Now everyone thinks, and I believe this, that they were astronomers. They could read the stars. It's pretty obvious they read the star from the east. We have seen his star. It's a particular star that they saw in the east and are come to worship him. But if you read on down in here, they didn't know to go to Bethlehem. They had to go to Herod and ask Herod where the king of the Jews was. And they thought, well, they had come from another country, but they come into the country where the king's supposed to be born, and they go and talk to the head man, and he don't know where the king is. But he gets all of his people together, and he asks them, where should Christ be born, in verse 4? And they said, the priests and the scribes said, Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet Micah, in Micah chapter 5. And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule a people. So they were depending on the prophets to tell them where the king would be born. And the wise men had come to find him. Now they're also in prophecy. this whole story is in the Old Testament, in bits and pieces, every bit of it. Now what we're going to look at, mostly it's a star, that's where I'm headed. And I've read all of, I can find, supposed to be smart people, they got a lot of letters behind their name, and none of them are for sure what that star was. But here's what I think. Let's just do that. We have seen his star in the east. These people were astronomers. They knew what the stars meant. They knew the signs in the stars. And they knew what they meant when they rose, you know, where they were in the sky. In Genesis chapter 1, God said, and on the fourth day, the stars were created to divide the day from the night, for signs, seasons, days, and years. Signs. That's God's sign. Before man could write, God was writing his message in the sky. Now, in our day and time, it's been so polluted and so confused, and the devil has took it and called it a horoscope. And now man thinks that the stars are for him. That's God's message. That's not, we can't move those stars around. God can. Now there was a star that shone, this is the time. Remember when we were talking about the shepherds last week? Jesus was born in a particular place, a particular time, to particular people that had already been foretold centuries before. He came exactly like God, the prophets had spoken God's word, and he came. And then God put signs, like you go in somewhere, you see a billboard. I like this little Facebook thing. They got a sign on the interstate said, half a mile Denny's. 0.8 miles Denny's. Mile and a half Denny's. You got anywhere you want to stop at. Well, there's signs up there, if we can read them. Several places in the Old Testament said before God's wrath, before that great day of the Lord comes, the sun will be darkened, the moon shall be turned to blood. Well, I think it'll also be dark on the earth, but when the sun's darkened, there's an eclipse. There's a total eclipse. And when there's a red moon, that's called a blood moon. Now that has happened in our lifetimes and previous. When Israel became a nation, there was a total eclipse and blood moon. In the 60s, Six-Day War, I believe it was, same thing. Then in 2015 to 2016, it happened again. And now, I think we've seen a little bit of what's prophesied because so many things are coming together for the end time. Our president, there's presidents all the way back before Reagan, when they were running for office, they promised to make Jerusalem the capital of Israel. We would recognize it. And none of them would do it. All of them promised it, none of them did. Until the president we have now got in there, he said he was going to do it. And against all, he's fought everybody. And against his own advisors, he did. Right after these, and he was elected right after this total eclipse of the sun and the blood moon. Now I believe there's more meaning to that, just like we've learned. There's more meaning than just what's superficial, what's on top. But it says the sun will be darkened and the moon will be turned into blood. And that cycle of the sun in eclipse and the moon's in eclipse doesn't happen at the same time very often. And it won't happen again in our lifetime. So something, God has put it on his billboard. Y'all get ready. Something's coming. Now, I don't know it all. You don't know it all. But God has told us what's going to happen before that great mighty day. Just like he had told them before the king was born. And these men, these wise men, and I believe they were magi, they were stargazers. You go on later on, God gives them a dream. They didn't go by the king's word, they went by a dream God gave. And they didn't go back and tell Herod where the child was. They went another way. And this star rose in the east. Now, I'm not educated in all this. I can't tell you how it works, but what a little bit I've read about it, they call planets stars because the planets shine. We can see them. And when the planet rises in a certain sign, which I'm talking about, the Bible calls it the Mazzaroth, we call it the Zodiac. And a lot of y'all have heard me talk about this before. The first one is the Virgin, which is significant of the birth. There's 12 of them. It goes all the way around, and it tells the story of Christ. And it ends with Leo the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Now, when they were camped out in the wilderness, they all had a standard, which is a flag, a banner. And they all had a picture of these things on their sign out front of where their tribe camped. God told them where each tribe was to camp. 3 on each side, 12. Levites separated in the middle. But each one of them had a standard. And the tribe of Judah was the one you went through to go into the tent where the tabernacle was. Before you entered into where the tabernacle was kept, you had to go past that standard, that sign. Judah, Lion, Christ. That's his sign. He's the Lamb of God. He's also the Lion.
Amen.
Because Revelations calls him. Now the star, we talked about this before too, when we were talking about stars. Let's go to Job. We're probably not going to get to Job anyway. Got a lot more we could talk about. In Job, start chapter 9. No, let's start with here, chapter 38. Chapter 38. Because what Brother Steve brought out last week is talking about the swaddling clothes, the swaddling cloth. God ties all this together. It's all tied together. And until we start digging it out, we just read past it. I was reading this chapter in Job, and the more you read this chapter, the more you see. In Job chapter 38, verse 9, God's talking to Job. And this whole chapter is God himself talking to Job. He begins by saying, he talked to Job out of a whirlwind. And he said, Job, gird up your loins. Gird up your loins like a man. I'm going to demand some things to you, and you answer me. Now, have you ever had your parents stand right there?
Oh, yeah.
And you had to come fess up, and they said, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I already know the answers. You better tell me You stand there like a, I'm telling you, and you answer me. And I stand, That's what God's doing out of a whirlwind. This wasn't a casual conversation. In verse 9, when I made the cloud and the garment thereof, God's talking about when he created everything. But he's talking about more than that. When I made the cloud, the garment thereof, talking about the earth, and thick darkness the swaddling band for it. Thick darkness, we would say outer space. Thick darkness, what's above the clouds? Darkness. And it's like a swaddling band. Have you ever thought about we're riding on a ball out in the middle of nothing that we can see? But there's something out there. It's not just black space, nothing. There's no such thing as nothing. Something's there. And God's telling us what's there right here. I made the thick darkness a swaddling band. Now what's a swaddling band?
The stars and the atmosphere.
It's whatever space is made out of it. Like the swaddling band they're talking about wrapping Jesus in. Probably Joseph wore that around his waist in case he died. So they wrapped it around the baby that was born to die to protect him. Without blemish, he was born in the stable with other lambs without blemish. Born to die. We're riding on the ball, or the earth, what I'm talking about. And space is our swaddling cloth. This ball we're riding on, it's got a particular path it travels. And it's been doing it ever since God put it there.
If there was no swaddling band around the universe, it would just be chaos. It would just be flying here and there doing whatever.
And that's
But
what it
because
is.
God put the swaddling, it's just, it blows your mind. It's amazing how God does things. And, he knew that something needed to hold all that together. So, he made the swaddling band around. We can't see it. We don't know what it looks like, but we know it's there. And it brings comfort to me to know that God's hands are holding this all together.
Amen. He's outside of it.
Yeah.
It's like a star and embroidery.
God's swaddling band at the sign in the heaven. Like it was on the baby. Yeah.
That's his arena. It's not ours.
Right.
Now let's back up. Oh, Lord. There's, I can't, you got it. In Psalms 19, we're not going to turn there. Psalms 19, it's all through the Bible. Heavens declare the glory of God. The stars, the heavens that we're looking at, they're talking to us. They've been doing it all along. Been doing it all along. Job 38, chapter 1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darketh counsel by words without knowledge? Elihu's been talking for 2 or 3 chapters, and he just about wore us out. And a lot of the things he says make sense. The last thing Elihu says in the previous chapter, in verse 23, touching the Almighty, we cannot find him out. He is excellent in power and in judgment, and in plenty of justice. He will not afflict. Men do therefore fear him, he respecteth not any that are wise or holy. It sounds like God's trying to hide all this from us. He is not. He's got it hidden for us. And God tells Job, he said, who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Talking about Elijah. Well, none of us know it all. We know we don't. Job admitted he didn't at the end, and God counted him righteous. Job had to pray for his friends. They had come there to try to pacify Job, and Job wound up having to pray for them. You can find yourself in a bad situation. I mean bad. Not just physically, but emotionally. I think most of us have been there. We've had to live through it. There ain't no end to it, it don't seem like, but right in the middle of it, you start praying for your friends. God's going to send you somebody that you can talk to, that you can help. And when Job prayed for his friends, this is a long book. And it'll just about bore you to tears, parts of it. I can't hardly read all of it. Because it just goes on and on and on. And God, it finally dawned on me, who is this that's talking and don't know what he's talking about? That's what God's saying. And I'm thinking, duh, how many times have I done that? How many times have we done that? We've all done that, right? Sometimes we all just hush and listen to what God's saying and try to get what he's saying. But in the middle of our worst times, God will give you the opportunity. Somebody will come along. You may not even know who they are. And it may not take 5 seconds to say something or do something to help them, but God has sent those people in your path. And if you'll act on it, God can bless you for it. We reap what we sow. We're going to sow griping and pity and on ourselves and all that kind of stuff. And I know it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy. But sometimes we just have to bow up. I had to tell myself the other day, and I said, self, shut up. Hush. Just shut up. Get quiet. And see if we can hear from God. And the same thing I was accusing somebody else of doing, when I sat there and shut up, then God could show me I've been doing the same thing.
Well, God never promised us a rose garden when we came to you.
But he told Job, gird up now your loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. You answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. As soon as you understand what I'm talking about, you go ahead and buddy and start talking. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? God Almighty, talking out of a whirlwind, asked you this. And then he tells you, if you know, go ahead and tell him. He's talking about on the surface. He's talking about when creation, all creation was made. The earth, everything we can see and hear. But just like we learned in Sunday school, it's the natural first and then it's the spiritual. It's the natural first. We're born in a natural body first and then we're born again. Part of, the examples just over and over and over and over. It's the same thing in this whole chapter. He's talking about creating the foundations of the world. Oh, Lord. Hold your place right there. Let me read a couple of scriptures to you. That's not all he was creating when he created the world. Matthew 13:35. All these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spake he not unto them, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. In Jesus' parables, he's given us secrets that God has kept secret since he made everything. He's not just talking about the earth and Job. He's talking about everything. What little bit we have dug out of the scriptures in the last 2 years, he's kept it secret just for us. Because we need it now. Right? Whatever we need, he's going to get it to us. And it may be just a spoonful at a time. That's all I can take. I was sitting there this morning, and it was just, I had to get up. I couldn't stand it. He'll give you something in a flash. And I don't know how to explain it to you. I don't have words for it. It just about overpowers you when he shows you this stuff. In Hebrews, y'all know, I'm going to go right back to Job. Hebrews 4:3. For we which have believed to enter into rest. You know what we've been talking about with these feasts, what they mean? All of it's tied together. All of it's in Jesus. We that believe do enter into rest. As he said, as I've sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest. Although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. This plan was finished, sealed. It's a done deal when God made the world. And he rested the seventh day from all his work. It was done then. And here we are, thousands of years later. And if we'll believe it, we'll enter into it. That's how it was all God's plan, all along. And if we're here right now, and Ann and I talked about that this morning. I just went and sat down. I couldn't take them. And I said, it is so peaceful. And it is so good to finally be where I know I'm where God wants me to be. Brother Don is where God's put him. That's a peace, isn't it? To know and we may not be doing everything God wants us to do, but at least we're in the right spot at the right time. And I think all of us are. I think God's put us together for this time. And he's not free. He's not free. All this was planned and put in motion at the foundation of the world. Who hath laid the measures thereof? He's talking about the foundation. But he's not just talking about the earth spinning in space. He's talking about it all, the natural and the spiritual. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who has stretched the line upon it? Who measured it out? When the right time came, when the time came, his son was born of a virgin in Bethlehem, in a manger. We could go on and on and on and on and on. when the time came. When the time came, he died on the cross. Just at the right time, he came out of that tomb. Just at the right time, the Holy Spirit came to you and started dealing with you and me. Just at the right time. Just at the right time. And if we'll listen. Go ahead and speak now, if you understand. Can you see how big it is? How big the picture is? Hey, can you just catch a glimpse? This is not a simple religion. This ain't got nothing to do with religion. It's got to do with life. Who measured it out? Who stretched the line on it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Where did I fasten this down? Where is it fastened? It's got to be fastened. Your house is tied down. Who laid the cornerstone thereof? There's so much here. Jesus is the cornerstone. He's the stone that the builders rejected. But he is our chief cornerstone. He is the foundation. When the morning stars, oh, he's talking about stars. When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Or who shut up the sea with doors when it brake forth, as if it had issued out of the womb. If it issued out of the womb, something being born. When the waters were separated from the dry land, God was creating everything. Out of chaos. You're talking about chaos. If there wasn't a swaddling band, if there wasn't something holding all this together, it'd just be chaos. Well, that's what the Bible said in the beginning. In one translation, that's what it's called, chaos. And everything going every which way. And God said, let there be light. First thing you see. And then he measured. I can just see him with a measuring tape, stretching it out. Yeah, you go that, compass. Measure out the sun and the galaxies and the stars. He said, wait a minute, I'm going to make some signs. They haven't got men on the earth yet, but I'm going to put them a sign up here. He's been up there ever since. And every language on earth calls those stars different words, same meaning. Those 12 signs, we may look at this. In those 12 signs, there are 3 constellations that make up the big constellation. And there's 3 stories in each one. And there's constellations in there like the Southern Cross. Things like that. It's all got to do with God's plan. Not our plan, his. There's 48 constellations with 48 different stories and one big story. All these little stories add up to one big story, and that's the Son of God, King, before the foundation of the world. When I made the cloud, the garment thereof, and thick darkness the swaddling band for it, and break up for it my decreed place, and set bars and doors, and said, hitherto shalt thou come, but no further. And here shall thy proud ways be stayed. Hast thou commanded the morning since thy days, and caused the day spring to know his place? Jesus is the bright morning star. Stars, he's talking about stars, the sign. It's just one part of the story. Verse 17. Have the gates of death been opened unto thee, or hast thou seen the doors of the shadow of death? Life and death, everything, from beginning to end, God knows it. He knows the way. He's able to lead us and guide us and take us on the way, protect us during the trip. But we're supposed to be talking about stars. In verse 31, canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pallades, or loose the bands of Orion? When we were going through this last time, Pallades is a group of stars, and they're bound together by gravity. They're not moving further apart, they stay the same. And Job didn't know it, but God did. This is God talking. God, we know they're bound together now. They didn't back then. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pallades? They're bound together. Or loose the bands of Orion. You ever heard of Orion's belt? Looks like a man with a belt around it. Those stars are not held together by gravity. And they're moving a little further apart. God loosed them. Canst thou bring forth the Mazzaroth in his season? That's the 12 signs, what we call the zodiac. Can you make them rise in the east at a certain time? Or can you guide Arcturus with his sons? This is a rogue star, and it don't have no certain place to go. And it's got a trail behind it. It's dragging stars with it, just going across the galaxy. It don't travel in a circle. God said, or can you guide Arcturus with his sons? In other words, God's saying he can't. And he came to me this morning because over here in Matthew, they had already talked about the star they saw in the east, his star, which was a star that rose in whatever, I don't know all the details, but whatever it put together, they knew a king was born. But over here, later on, in Matthew chapter 2, verse 9, and when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star, which they saw in the east, went before them, till they came and stood over where the young child was. This star they had seen in the east, Bethlehem's due south of Jerusalem. Stars don't move north to south. They were headed from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, about 6 miles south. That star was headed south. Can you guide Arcturus and his son? Now, I don't know, like y'all know, this is Brother Dan's thinking, okay? I always say that. But that's what God said in Job. He asked Job, he said, can you guide this star? Tell me if you can. Well, that would be serious. I can't guide a star. I'm doing good to drive my car over here. But I can't. Instead of moving east to west, they came from the east. But then they went from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. And that star went. That's my thinking. Yeah. Can you guide Arcturus? I can't. That's God's sign. Amen.